My name is Berlin Gunning. This is my first video. I'm trying to start something new and real here on the channel. I'm an author of 3, soon to be 4 fantasy novels. And pretty much what I'll be doing, if you have me to listen to and to follow, is I will be explaining my philosophy of writing, creative writing, that is, which is a lot different than some people's. And yes, for this particular video, I'm in bed, so deal. You're never going to see me in a regular video sitting in a regular chair, because I don't sit in a regular chair. I am in a wheelchair. I have cerebral palsy, and I write from my wheelchair, and I live from my wheelchair. So, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. And what inspired me to do this video, and indeed every other video after the third on this channel, which this will be, is a very popular YouTuber whom I do not like for reasons that I will explain, but whom I shall never name, because I don't want to be as rude to him as he was to me and his other 164,000 listeners. He is a very good storyteller and a beautiful speaker, but he is extremely profane, particularly swearing at other people in his feeds and in his comments and in his interactions and YouTube and TikTok and Instagram interactions. And his swearing was to the point that, since it was at me and others, it offended me, and I brought it up to him, and that got me blocked and banned and ridiculed and otherwise abused by him and others that were his followers. Anyway, one of the things that he said to me in the message before he blocked me was that my ideas about writing made him very uncomfortable. And if that is the case, well then, I guess somebody needs to learn to deal with a little discomfort. Anyway, so my ideas about writing are as unconventional as my looks and my writing style. So I'm just going to start, and I'm going to tell you what I think. And if this video gets taken down or doesn't get many views, oh well, at least my views will be out there. And if you want to ask me questions, go ahead. And who knows, you may like what you hear, and I may have kind of a following after this. I don't have to have millions of followers, but just, I like to discuss different ideas, and I don't like to be in control of, incomplete control of an idea or a channel or a possible dialogue, as you'll see. Okay, so I don't know, maybe this is a generational thing, but I'll go ahead and ask. How many have read the book Charlotte's Web? That's Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. When I was going to school, it remained, after 50 years in print, still a very popular book. For those of you who don't know, it's the story of a pig who gets rescued from the bacon factory by a spider that can write words in her web, and the words that she writes describe the pig. And the people are so moved by her descriptions of this pig that he doesn't get eaten. He gets promoted to celebrity status. Anyway, so my late father, who inspired my love of reading, read, of course, Charlotte's Web to me, and then, being the history buff that he is, or was, he read the biography of E.B. White. And one of E.B. White's interesting statements, and this has shaped who I am as a writer and as an author, is that the story wrote itself. And that really moved me and motivated me. And then a couple of years later, well, considerably later, but fairly recently, if you're old like me, came J.K. Rowling of Harry Potter fame, who claimed that the entire Harry Potter story came to her fully formed. Pardon me. It came to her fully formed. And she just wrote down what came to her. I take it a little further, and I think this is what made our profane and insecure writer friend, our profane and insecure YouTuber creator friend rather uncomfortable. He admittedly is a very controlling person. He's the first person to admit that he's extremely controlling in his life. And that's fine, but not to the point where you tell people that simple statements of fact that they make to you make you uncomfortable. So anyway, my philosophy of writing, and this is fiction writing, I do other kinds of writing, but for fiction writing, is I believe that a character chooses an author to write their story. And a character or a group of characters. You choose the author to write your story. And it is the duty of the author to sit quietly and listen to what you, as the character, have to say to them. And they write it down exactly, and you write it down, you, the author, write it down exactly as they tell it to you. And the character, basically, so you have a story. And the character comes to you and says, yes, well, I lived on the streets, and this is the way it happened, and this is what I said, and this is who I said it to, and this is the tone in which I said it. And yes, I really did say that, even though it doesn't feel quite right, because you're listening to me, and this is what happened. I'll give you an example. In my first fantasy novel, there is a character, the main character is the queen, and there is a servant character who has been very poorly treated all his life. And upon meeting the queen, the first thing he does when she speaks to him is to spit in her face. Now, at the point where he spits in her face, he is tied to the wall of a dungeon because she, of course, is the queen and this servant is a nobody. And so she, of course, has no idea of his particular plight. Although she has a notion that her people have wronged his people for many years. And she wants to rectify that, but she has no idea exactly what he suffered until he and his people begin to tell her. Anyway, so the two characters, the queen and the servant who did the spitting, are telling me this part of the story. And the servant and the queen both insisted to me, yes, you spit in my face. Yes, I spit in her face. Doesn't matter if I'm proud if I did it or not. At this point, all you need to know is I spit in her face, he said, and you need to write that down. Just write down that I spit in her face and write how calm she was when she wiped her face and said, well, I probably deserved that. My kind have had that coming from your kind for many years. And I was horrified. I'm like, you're the queen. If she's the queen, you're not supposed to spit in her face. He's like, no, but that's what happened. And I wrote it, despite my horror, I wrote it exactly as he told it to me. He and she. Because, of course, when he said, oh, I spit in her face, she's like, yes, he spit in my face. And I'm like, are you sure? And both characters were like, yes, he spit in, and he spit in my, and I spit in her face. And I wrote it down, and it has, for me, become one of the focal points of the story, and it keeps getting referred to throughout the series because it's a turning point in the story in about race relations. I'll get into more of what the Daryevna series, which my book series is called, is about in another video. But the point is, I didn't force that dialogue. I didn't force the happening. I just let the characters tell me what happened. Now, I don't know, and I don't pretend to know how my characters chose me. I don't claim any superiority of writing skills. And I certainly don't try to control the narrative. I used to, but I have found that trying to control your narrative only leads to writer's block. That's all that happens to you. It leads to writer's block. I used to try to control the narrative. I used to fall, I can't tell you how many authors have said, oh, my characters do things I don't want them to do, on, and I have to force them to do this and that. And I'm like, if you write like that, of course you lose inspiration because you're trying to control the narrative too much. And this thing that E.B. White said of letting the story write itself, let the characters come to you. Let them tell you how it was. Let them tell you what they saw, what they felt, what they experienced. And I have encountered far less writer's block from creative exhaustion because of that. That does not mean I write every day. That does not mean I don't have long periods where I don't write. But when I'm exhausted and uninspired, it's from outside sources. It's not from inside my head because I'm worn out with writing. And on the rare occasions that I do experience true writer's block, where I can't write as opposed to don't want to write, it's because, I always say it's because my characters need a break. And they'll eventually come back to me in full, and they'll be rested and they'll be ready to go. And in case you didn't understand that, I said it, they'll be rested and ready to go. And when they are, oh, the experience is rich. And this, but the such halts in writing from internal factors are very rare, simply because I let the characters tell the story. And I partner with them to tell the story. Would you force any other human to do what you wanted them to do? No, you wouldn't. You would treat them with respect. You would honor them. You would abide by their wishes. You would listen to them. And it's much more fun than doing it the traditional way, where I was once writing a story years ago, and I complained to a friend that I couldn't make my main character do what I wanted her to do. This is a completely different story. And he said, well, force her to. And I tried, and it was a complete flop. I couldn't get anywhere. Now that I've adopted this method, I let my characters take me on adventures that I never saw coming. Now, that doesn't mean that I deviate and don't tell the story as it happened. But if I listen enough to the characters, they will present me with a scenario that makes sense in each chapter or section that I write, and that ultimately blends together to make a story that is cohesive, but in a way that is wildly beyond my wildest dreams. That is wildly beyond my wildest dreams. Yes, that's what I said. I mean, it's beyond my wildest dreams. And it's a good story, and people like that writing style. But I don't tell very many people live what I just told all of you, because so many people are creeped out by the notion that I treat my characters like real people. Now, please understand, I know full well, in one sense, in the sense of the adult world, that no, my characters are not real people. But in another way, oh, heck yes, they're real. Heck yes. In fact, they are more real than real in some ways. They are pulsing and living and wonderful and cooperative and beautiful. And they don't frustrate me because I don't attempt to control them. And I think that comes from two things. Number one, yes, I'm in bed, and that is because I spend most of my life in a wheelchair, and today I'm just relaxing. And I think because I am confined to a wheelchair, that has taught me a lot about control and a lot about what I can and cannot do, and what I can and cannot control in life. Now, I'm not going to have this devolve into a discussion of my limitations. That I won't do. But anyway, it has taught me a lot about things that I can't control. And, I can't control other people, so why in the world would I control these people that populate my head? Just let them tell their story. Again, as I said, I know these people do not exist in the physical sense or in a sense of what is generally perceived as reality. And I am not trying to insist from a psychological point of view that they are real. I'm not trying to insist on that as a manifestation of some mental illness. I know that they are not real in the physical world, but they are very real in my imagination, just as I'm sure, for example, Harry Potter fans know that Harry Potter is not real. But in a way, oh yes, he is, because he was very real. And that is first and foremost because he was very real to Ms. Rowling. He must have been for her to write about him. And so I treat my characters as though they were real people because I can't control real people. And if I want to write with skill, I can't control my characters. Now, I can control whether I write in correct grammar and syntax and style and voice and form, the form being fiction. And those are the things that I, as a writer with my master's degree in writing, can control. And I do control those things, but I do not control the basic layout or makeup of a story. Now, as I said, that makes some people, including this horribly profane and rather, I think, unskilled YouTube creator, I think that makes some people like that very uncomfortable, and I'm prepared for that. And if you don't want to ever hear from me again, don't subscribe to this channel. But if you do and you're interested and you'd like to help me build a following, please do. And I'm not going to change my view of writing. I'm going to teach people to embrace their own writing style. But I'm also going to teach you that it shouldn't be about control. Because one of the things that the YouTuber said that gave me the creeps, he said this a few weeks ago, he said that creating a world made him, and having, a bunch of people like these two characters that he created made him feel powerful. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that to me is a very wrong attitude. Creative gifts and endowments and the ability to bring a world to life shouldn't make you feel powerful. It is a blessing, and it should make you feel not small in the way of insignificant, but small the way you feel when you stand next to the ocean or look up at the sky full of stars, or any experience that brings you into contact with a natural wonder that makes you feel small in relation to what you're looking at. Not insignificant, but humbled and honored and privileged. Writing for a lot of authors is about power and control. And I can usually tell when an author is desperately trying to control a narrative, because then you have a weak storyline. If you let the story write itself, as Ms. Rowling or Mr. White did, you will have a much better beginning, middle, and end. And that is my view. And it makes writing a much more satisfactory experience. Because if you can realize that you're not, if you can relinquish control of your characters, then you will not make the mistake of our YouTuber friend, and you will not and try to control the people around you and the way the people around you see the characters that they're fans of. I'm not trying to be presumptuous here, but let's say I get a healthy following for my channel, and I start, explaining the story of my series that I'm writing, and people start reading my book or engaging with me, and they say, oh, I like this character because blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to tell you your interpretation of my character is wrong. What I'm more likely to tell you is, okay, maybe my character presented itself to your mind in this way. I can't tell you how many times the guy that I don't agree with his approach to writing said, no, it's not meant that way, you're reading it wrong. And I'm like, that's not engagement with either your characters or your audience. People are not dumb, they're just different than you. And you want to control people's responses. And the reason I know that and can say that is because he admits that it's very hard for him not to control other people's responses to his work. And I'm like, that's the whole dynamic of writing fiction. You write for people who see things differently than you do, who perceive things differently than you do. Does not mean they're stupid. Doesn't mean you're stupid or wrong. It just means that everyone has a different perspective, and every perspective is legitimate. And maybe if you would open your mind, you could come to see your characters in different lights. I know that I have. There's a scene in one of my stories where the queen, her duty, of course, is to bear children. And all she wants throughout the first book is for her husband to give her a male heir who doesn't die. To become pregnant with a male heir who doesn't die. And she is horrible to her husband about it. Now, I knew that she was nasty to her husband about it. She was a nasty character about the whole thing. But I didn't realize how horrible she was until somebody read the book and told me I couldn't stand her at first because she was so horrible. And I looked back and I'm like, no kidding, she is atrocious to this man because of her desire for a baby. And I wasn't gonna change that. That was the whole point of the story, but I didn't realize how deep the atrociousness went until I really looked back at the scenes where she's terrible to him, and I kind of considered from my reader's perspective, oh yes, she is terrible. And that is where I'm gonna, let her carry on being terrible until she tells me that she no longer feels like being terrible to this poor husband of hers who doesn't want an heir so much as he just wants to be a dad. And it was very interesting to think of it that way. So I think this channel will discuss pretty much how to interact with your characters and how to allow your characters to be their own people and let them take over your imagination. Pretty much. Let them commandeer your imagination. So go ahead and either give me a like or a thumbs down if you hate it, because I understand and I'm prepared for a lot of flack about this post, because I know the video isn't great, but it's raw and it's real, and I'm going to try to espouse my ideas. And if it draws a hail of criticism, oh well. Bad publicity is good publicity. At least it's not no publicity. And at least others will know what I think. So go ahead and react as you see fit, and have a wonderful day.